This is the beginning of part 2 of my lecture on Augustine. In the beginning of Book 6, Augustine again explains that he still cannot fully comprehend how substance could be spiritual and non-material. He writes, I was suffering. I wanted to be as certain about things I could not see as I am certain that 7 and 3 are 10. I was not so mad as to think that I could consider even that to be something unknowable, but I desired other things to be as certain as this truth, whether physical objects which were not immediately accessible to my senses, or spiritual matters, which I knew no way of thinking about except in physical terms. Augustine writes that he believed in God, and nothing could force him not to believe, but he couldn't yet grasp what it means to say that God is non-physical, because he could not yet comprehend any existence other than physical existence. He goes on, my belief in God was sometimes stronger, sometimes weaker, but at least I always retained belief both that you are and that you care for us, even if I did not know what to think about your substantial nature or what way would lead or lead me back to you. So since we were too weak to discover the truth by pure reasoning and therefore needed the authority of sacred writings, I now began to believe that you would never have conferred such preeminent authority on the Scripture, now diffused through all lands, unless you had willed that it would be a means of coming to faith in you and a means of seeking to know you. Augustine also explains that he is absolutely miserable with his life at this point. He's filled with anxiety and he can't seem to find happiness. He tells a story of a drunk, destitute beggar whom he passes on a street in Milan. The beggar is laughing and joking and seems to have the carefree cheerfulness that Augustine has been seeking, but has not, and perhaps would never, achieve. He writes, there was no question that the beggar was happy, and I was racked with anxiety. He had no worries. I was frenetic, and if anyone asked me if I would prefer to be merry or to be racked with fear, I would have answered to be merry. Yet if he asked whether I would prefer to be a beggar or the kind of person I then was, I would have chosen to be myself, a bundle of anxiety and fears. What a strange choice! Surely it could not be the right one. At that time there was a gulf between the beggar and me. He was far happier, not merely because he was soaked in cheerfulness while I was eviscerated with anxieties, but also because he had acquired wine by wishing good luck to passers-by, whereas I sought an arrogant success by telling lies. Augustine explains that the anxiety that he was experiencing was also due to his lack of knowledge with respect to what will happen when he dies. Life, he writes, is a misery. Death is uncertain. It may suddenly carry us off. In what state shall we depart this life? Where are we to learn the things we have neglected here? And must we not rather pay for this negligence with punishments? What if death itself will cut off and end all anxiety by annihilating the mind? This, too, then, is a question needing scrutiny. Augustine writes that he was stuck fast in the glue of the flesh's morbid impulse and lethal sweetness, and that to a large extent what held him captive and tortured was the habit of satisfying with vehement intensity the insatiable sexual desire. Nothing kept me from an even deeper whirlpool of erotic indulgence except fear of death and of your coming judgment. Thus, at the end of Book 6, Augustine is a miserable wretch. He believes in God, but can't conceive of God as non-physical. He can't seem to control his sex drive, and he is an admitted liar. He wants to be happy, but he's filled with anxiety, and he still hasn't discovered a way to solve the problem of evil. This ends part 2 of my lecture.